Hi, my name is Sunny, and I wanted to make a podcast that would be an easy listening, feel good experience like a campfire where you share stories, chat with friends, play games, sing songs, and come home with good vibes. Every week, I want to provide a campfire corner in your day. I hope you will join me. Hello again, this is Sunny, and you're listening to Campfire Corner. In this episode, we are going to talk about redemption. As humans, we have our own flaws, we have our weaknesses. And sometimes we let those weaknesses rule our lives. But no matter how bad the weaknesses are or how bad things get, we always have the potential to step back and take control of our life and change the course of our life despite those weaknesses. Sometimes those weaknesses actually make us stronger. That is redemption. I'll tell you a couple of stories about redemption, and instead of recommending a music today, I will recommend a TV show. And of course, there will be a question at the end which you can answer by going to the website campfirecornerpodcast.com. Let's start with the story. This is the story of Kalidas, the man who was a fool, a big fool, one of the biggest, stupid, ignorant fools in the world, and then how he became one of the biggest scholars that the world has ever seen. The story starts in Ujjain in India. The king of Ujjain had a daughter who was called Vidyottama. Vidyottama means one who is a scholar, a female who is a scholar. And Vidyottama was indeed quite a smart, brilliant child right from a very young age. She showed so much promise that the king appointed a teacher, Guru Vararachi, to train her in everything. As she grew up, Vidyottama kept getting more and more intelligent. She kept getting more knowledge, and she became an exceptional talent as she mastered literature, arts, and she loved to debate. She loved to have these things called Shastrarth. A Shastrarth is a scholastic debate on scriptures. About the world, about the God, religion. All of those things are included in a Shastrarth. And she defeated all the learned men in the kingdom one by one, these Pandits. Pandit is a Hindi word which literally means somebody who is very knowledgeable, who is a scholar. It has now been adopted into English, but that's the original meaning. And Vidyottama kept getting smarter, getting more knowledge to the point that one day she even defeated her teacher, Guru Vararachi, in debate. Now, Vidyottama, although a scholar, a very learned woman, she had a flaw. Her flaw was that she was arrogant. This reminds me of an Urdu sher. I know you don't know Urdu, but I will translate. But let me say that in original Urdu first because it rhymes and it's beautiful. The poet says, छोड़ी शराब माइले पिंदार हो गया, मैं तौबा करके और गुनहगार हो गया. What it means is that I swore off alcohol, I stopped drinking wine because it was a sin, but that made me proud of how good I am. Yes, I became a victim. Maile pindar is I became a victim of pride. And the second line says that after swearing off of wine, I actually became more sinful. So arrogance is kind of a sin. And Vidyottama had it in big doses. When she defeated a Pandit, she would not accept her victory calmly. She would insult those Pandits. Even when she defeated her own teacher, Guru Vararachi, she insulted him in the court. She humiliated him in front of others. Such was the arrogance. And I'm sure you would have seen that in real life as well, even today. You can find sometimes somebody who is very learned, very smart, but then they are a little bit too full of themselves. I think humility is extremely important, no matter how learned you are. There are other stories about that as well. Let's continue with this one. So when she insulted all those pundits, they were obviously pissed off with her. When she insulted her own guru, he also got very angry with her, but instead of saying anything there, he decided that she needed to be taught a lesson. All the pundits together with Guru Varachi got together and they decided that a fitting revenge for Vidyottama would be that she should be married to the biggest fool in the world. Vidyottama was very proud of her knowledge. She was very proud of her brain, her brilliance. So she had already told her parents, the king and the queen, that she was not going to marry a prince. She was going to marry somebody who could defeat her in a debate. So the Shastrarth would decide who was fit enough to marry her. A lot of people came to try their luck, to try their knowledge. They had a Shastrarth with her, but nobody could defeat her, and they had to go home in disgrace. But the Pandits decided that this was not going to happen. They are going to find the biggest fool and somehow trick Vidyottama into marrying him. With that mission, they went in search of a fool, a big fool which could be their revenge on Vidyottama. As they were walking around, going from village to village, talking to people and trying to find the most foolish man, one day they were walking through a small forest and they saw a man, a young man, in a tree, and he was cutting the branch that he was sitting on. He was definitely going to fall, but he was so stupid that he could not see that. So they looked at each other. They thought this is a promising candidate. They stood under the tree. They called out to him. Said, "Hey, what's your name?" Said, "What's it to you?" So okay, he's quite arrogant as well. They said, "You know that if you keep cutting that branch, you're going to fall down." And the man says, "That's okay. It took me a long time to climb up this tree. At least this way I will come down fast." The Pandits looked at each other like, this is such a stupid man. He's only thinking about coming down fast. He's not thinking about the injuries he will have from falling from that height. So they said, "If you come with us, we will get you a great meal. Do you like food?" I said, "Yeah, of course I like food." So they asked him to come down. He came down. They asked his name. He said, "My name is Kalidas." I said, "Okay, so Kalidas will take you to the palace, will get you a great meal, but you will have to have a debate." He said, "Okay, fine." Because just as the learned people have arrogance, stupid people also have arrogance. So they dressed him up well first, and then they took him to the palace. They dressed him up like a pandit, and they fawned over him. They pretended that he was the biggest scholar of all of them. He was more senior than Vararuchi. And they told the princess that this is our teacher, this is our guru. He's the biggest scholar in the kingdom. And he was a handsome man as well. So Kalidas was a good-looking young man. Princess was interested, but she said, "I'm going to have a debate with him." They said, the Pandits told her that, "Your Highness, you can't have a debate with him because he has taken the vow of silence, and for a month he cannot speak anything." But the princess was like a horse rearing to go into the race. She said, "Okay, I still want to have the debate, then we can have the debate with just signals, sign language instead of using words. But I want to have the debate now. They said okay. They had already told Kalidas to not say anything. This was all part of the plan. So the debate started. Vidyottama sat opposite Kalidas, and Vidyottama started. She raised one finger. Kalidas thought, this lady is saying that she's going to poke my eye out. He raised two fingers. Said, if you poke my eye out, I'm going to poke both your eyes out. Vidyottama said, what is he saying? Pandit says, what did you mean when you raised one finger? Vidyottama said, I mean that God is one entity. The Pandit said, yes, our Guru sees that, and he says that God and man, when they are together, the soul and the divine, only then this world has any meaning. Vidyottama said, okay. So she went with her next question. She raised 5 fingers. Again, our stupid fool Kalidas thinks that she says she's going to slap me. In response to that, he raised a fist. Like, if you slap me, I'm going to punch you. This is how stupid he is, really. Okay. Again, Vidyottama asked the Pandits to translate. Pandit said, what did you mean when you raised your 5 fingers? Vidyottama explained that, I mean that the human body is made of 5 elements. The 5 elements: earth, sky, fire, wind, and water. The Pandit said, yes, and our Guru says that when all these 5 elements come together, only then the human body becomes worthwhile. Only then you can use it to worship, to meditate. Vidyottama accepted that. Yes, good response. This debate continued like that. Vidyottama kept putting up intelligent questions with her signals. Kalidas kept giving stupid answers with his gestures, and the Pandits kept translating in what was much better than what Kalidas could ever have thought. This reminds me of a joke. This is a kind of a, let me see what nationalities are there. So there is the French police. The French police capture a thief. Let's say the thief is Italian, okay, and the police do not speak his language. He doesn't speak their language, but they want to find out where has he hidden the loot, the things that he stole. So they get a translator. So they get an Indian translator to translate between the two. They ask the thief, where have you hidden the jewels that you stole? The thief says, I'm not gonna tell. The translator tells them, he says he's not gonna tell. And the police inspector says, then if he doesn't tell me, I'm going to shoot him. The translator translates to the Italian thief, like, if you don't tell him, he's gonna shoot you. The jewel thief says that, okay, I'll tell you. And he tells the translator where the jewels are hidden. The translator tells the police inspector, well, he says you can shoot him if you want, but he's not gonna tell. So you see, the value of the translator in things like that, in the most important negotiations, can be quite crucial. The result of this debate, aided by the translations, the creative translations provided by the Pandits, was that Vidyottama was convinced that he is a very scholarly person, and she liked him, so she was ready to marry him. All the marriage ceremonies and everything was done very quickly before Kalidas's Maun Vrat, the vow of silence, could expire. So during the time he did not speak, to her and they got married. On their wedding night, when they were in the palace, Vidyottama and Kalidas were at the window. They saw a camel outside, and Kalidas, our lovable fool, says, "Oh, there's a camel." He says it in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, the word for camel is ushtra. But Kalidas is illiterate. Kalidas says utra. When Vidyottama heard this, she suspected that something is wrong. How can this scholarly person have a wrong word for such a basic thing? So she talked to him. She asked a few more questions. And pretty soon it became obvious that Kalidas was not a scholarly person. He was an idiot. He was completely ignorant, illiterate. Vidyottama was furious. She called Kalidas a fool, she humiliated him, and finally she kicked him out of the palace. But hold on, this is not the end. The theme of this episode is redemption. So, spurned by his bride and tortured by his love, because Kalidas had fallen in love with Vidyottama. She was a beautiful woman, very bright, very learned. So Kalidas left the kingdom and he traveled far and wide. For many years he was not heard from. All those years he spent studying and learning everything he could find. He spent time with learned people, he studied time learning the language, and he spent those years gathering as much knowledge as he could. And he did become a real scholar. So many years later, Kalidas comes back to the kingdom, comes back to the palace, and comes to see the princess. When the princess Vidyottama saw Kalidas this time, she said to him in a sarcastic tone, these are the three words she used, Asti kaschit vag vishesh. Sanskrit, the translation is there anything particularly intelligent that you want to say to me? What she was implying was that have you attained any knowledge or have you become so special that I should give you a special welcome? And this is the beauty of his years spent learning all those things, that Kalidas wrote 3 epic poems starting from those words. One word, one epic. Asti, that was the beginning of his poem Kumar Sambhavam. Kaschit, that was the first word of the first verse of his epic Meghadutam. And then Vak was the starting word for the first verse of his work Raghuvansham. When I heard this story the first time, it was told to the class by one of our teachers. And he was a real learned person, not like me. He actually had a lot of knowledge. He knew Sanskrit very well. I did take Sanskrit in school, but I'm not that good. He actually knew all the 3 verses. He knew them by heart from these 3 epics. So when he told us this story, told us this sentence, he also told us the verses that actually were part of those epics. I have looked online. You can find those verses online easily, but I can't even pronounce them because it's proper Sanskrit. This story is a kind of a legend. So there were four epics that he created. One was the Meghadutam, Kumar Sambhavam, Raghuvansham, and Ritu Samhara. So Vag and Vishesh, two different words and two different epics. The story is a kind of a legend. If you start googling it, you will find that some people think this is true, and some people think that this is actually just a legend made up by people to kind of illustrate a point about redemption. I don't know how true this is, but I do know that Kalidas was a real man. He was a real poet. He was a real scholar. The works that he has written, the epics that he has written, the plays that he has written, those are available even today. Some of those are very popular. One of his work, Abhigyan Shakuntalam, which is the story of Shakuntala and Dushyant, that has been made into a play many times in the theatre, and it has had movies made on that as well, Hindi movies, or you can say Sanskrit movies, because they had dialogues in Sanskrit. And he went on to become one of the 9 gems of Emperor Vikramaditya's court later on. So this is the story of Kalidas, the man who started his life as a big fool, but he became a great scholar simply because his heart was broken by a very learned woman who was not very kind. So for today's recommendation section, I want to recommend a TV show to you. And the TV show is called The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. Craig Ferguson is a Scottish-American comedian. The show has been off the air, not off the air actually, just Craig stopped doing it after doing it for 10 years. But thousands of the episodes are available online, full episodes on YouTube. So you can check it out. The reason I'm recommending that in this episode is because Craig Ferguson also has a story of redemption. I've not read his autobiography, but I do know that he was born in Scotland, Glasgow. His childhood was difficult, and then he got addicted to drinking. For quite a few years, he spoiled his life by drinking to excess or taking drugs like cocaine. But then when he was 29 years old, he decided to change his life. He went into rehab, stopped drinking, stopped taking drugs, and then from then on, continued on that journey to turn his life around. That's one of the reasons I like him. I also like him because he's a very fast thinker. He did drop out of school because of all those bad habits, but since then he has, kind of like Kalidas, he has taught himself. He has become a much more well-read person, a much more intelligent person, as if he had gone to college. And he is very open and vocal about all of it. He makes so much fun of himself on that show that it's kind of refreshing and fun to see. But he's also a very unconventional chat show host. If I ever become a chat show host, I would like to, then I would be something like him, because he doesn't play by the rules. He stays within the format more or less, but he doesn't do his interviews in typical ways that people do interviews. He would just talk to his guests, and he is very witty. He's very fast as well when somebody says something, so it's very, very funny. But be warned that he's like a child, so he's very profane. He has disregard for the rules that FCC sets, so they always obviously beep out the curse words that he uses. But he's very clever, so he uses lots of innuendos and double entendres and all that. So if that kind of thing offends you, then don't check him out. But if you can take that in your stride, then I would highly recommend checking out The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. I will link one episode in the show notes, and you can go from there and then see if you like it. Yeah, so that's my recommendation for this episode. Craig Ferguson. Check out his specials as well. He's done comedy specials because he do stand-up comedy as well. And definitely the show. Check it out. It's kind of fun in a very insane kind of way. My question for today is regarding this whole point of being smart, being arrogant, and being kind. I would like to know, would you date somebody or would you marry somebody who was not smart? I'm not saying somebody at the level of being stupid like Kalidas was in the beginning of the story, but somebody who was not super smart. What would you do if they were, let's say, if they were kind, or if they were good looking or rich or famous? Would you date them? Would you marry them even if they were not smart? Where would you draw the line between smart and kind or smart and rich? Would you marry somebody who was stupid if they were famous and rich? Let me know. There's a link in the show notes that will open a form and you can enter a question there. Sorry, your answer there. Maybe I'm not so smart. In this episode, I told you the story of Kalidas, which was a story of redemption. I recommended to you the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson because his is another story of redemption. And I asked you a question, would you date somebody if they were not super smart? What would make you date them? You can answer this question by going to the form that I have linked in the show notes or going to my website, campfirecornerpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week. Thank you for staying with me all the way through. Don't forget to check the show notes for the additional items that I mentioned in this episode. There's a link there where you can talk back to me. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss my future episodes. I am Sunny and this is Campfire Corner. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, night. See you in the next one. Next week, the story of the most senseless bet that you might have ever heard. 15? Done, cried the banker. Gentlemen, I stake 2 million. Agreed. You stake your millions and I stake my freedom, said the young man. And this wild, senseless bet was carried out. The banker, spoilt and frivolous, with millions beyond his reckoning, was delighted at the bet. At supper, he made fun of the young man and said, "Think better of it, young man, while there is still time. To me, 2 million is a trifle, but you are losing 3 or 4 of the best years of your life. I say 3 or 4 because you won't stay longer."